Well, that's where I want to go with this lesson on the music that is described in the New Testament in the New Testament church. And there's several verses on your screen, beginning with Matthew chapter 26 and verse 30. That verse says, "And when they had sung an hymn, they went out into the Mount of Olives." Now notice there, this is Jesus meeting with His disciples at what is commonly referred to the Last Supper. They had just taken that last Passover meal together before Christ is crucified, and they go from here out to the garden, and Jesus is taken and crucified after this event. That's the context, what is commonly referred to as the Last Supper. And so, now notice here, it says, "And when they had sung an hymn," and so the word there is sang. They sung an hymn. Now, you know the context there where He told Peter, "Go prepare the upper room." You know, if there's any of you out there that would like to call in and say that when Jesus told Peter to go prepare the upper room, that meant that Peter was going to go make sure that they had the musical instruments there that they needed to sing this hymn before they went out. Now, anyone looking at that verse would realize that they sang that hymn without mechanical instruments of music. That there was no mechanical instruments of music present where they were and when they sang that hymn. And so it was just singing, wasn't it? Well, let's go on. The next verse we want to look at is Acts chapter 16, verse 25. And it says, "And at midnight Paul and Silas prayed and sang praises unto God, and the prisoners heard them." Now, folks, do you suppose here that Paul maybe broke out his tambourine and Silas maybe got out his fiddle, and they started playing and singing there in prison? No, they were in prison. They had been beaten. They were in stocks. They were in the inner prison. And yet they were singing praises to God. Now, did they need mechanical instruments of music to sing praises unto God? Well, they very obviously did not have them in this context. They did not have mechanical instruments of music. And so here again, we have a setting where praise is being offered up to God in song, and it's very obvious that there were no mechanical instruments of music present. Well, let's go on and look at the next verse. Romans chapter 15, verse 9. "And that the Gentiles might glorify God for His mercy, as it is written, For this cause I will confess to thee among the Gentiles, and sing unto thy name." Now, folks, I know you can see the pattern forming here. Every time the New Testament mentions music in the setting of worship, it says sing. Every single time it says sing. Okay? Let's go on and look at 1 Corinthians chapter 14 and verse 15. "What is it then? I will pray with the Spirit, and I will pray with the understanding also. I will sing with the Spirit, and I will sing with the understanding also." Now, folks, this is in the direct context of the Lord's Day assembly. Paul had said in this context, when you come together as the church. 1 Corinthians chapter 11. 1 Corinthians chapter 16, on the first day of the week. This is in the very context of the first day of the week assembly. And it says that they were to sing. Okay? They were to sing. And so there again, now the point I'm making here is that every time New Testament, the setting of New Testament worship where music is involved is presented, is described, it says sing with no mention of playing anything. Ever. Okay? And the reason we're going through all of these verses is to show that it's not something that, just has a verse here, a verse there. There's a lot of verses that describe the music that is offered up to God in praise. Okay? What kind of music did the New Testament church, as recorded in the New Testament of Jesus Christ, offer up to God? Well, we've been through several passages already, and we can see that music described there. Let's go on and look at Ephesians chapter 5 and verse 19. It says, speaking to yourselves in psalms and hymns and spiritual songs, singing and making melody in your heart to the Lord. Now, folks, this is a crucial verse when we're talking about the kind of music that God wants in worship. It's very clear that God wants music offered up to Him in worship, but what kind of music? Well, the only way we can know what kind of music God wants is to see how it's described in the New Testament. Well, notice here. Now, this is a very important verse, because it says, speaking to yourselves. Now, folks, that right there, speaking to yourselves in the Greek, and you call your pastors, go on and call up, ask the pastor and ask them what that says in the Greek. And if they're worth their weight in salt when it comes to understanding the original language of the New Testament, they will tell you that statement right there says, each one speaking to each other one. Each one speaking to each other one. And so that's how the music of the New Testament church is described. Each one speaking to each other one. Now, folks, you can't do that with a solo. And so, Sunday morning, when you go into your man-made, unbiblical, unscriptural church that Jesus didn't die for, and you got somebody up singing a solo, ask yourself, in Ephesians 5:19 it says, each one speaking to each other one, speaking to yourselves. That is, all of you that are there, speaking to yourselves. Each one speaking to each other one in psalms and hymns and spiritual songs. Ask yourself, is this person singing a solo, does that fit the description here of each one speaking to each other one? Speaking to yourselves, plural, everybody. Each one speaking to each other one. Or is it something that is not described in the New Testament? You got, we looked at Matthew chapter 26, verse 30, where Jesus and the disciples sang a hymn. They all sang together. You got Paul and Silas in prison. They were both singing together. Okay, each one singing to each other one every time. Acts chapter 16, verse 25, Paul and Silas in prison. We got 1 Corinthians chapter 14, verse 15. The church come together, all of them singing together. Okay, that's how it's described. Well, does that describe the singing where you go, each one singing with each other one? Or do you have solos? Do you have choirs? Do you have special singing groups? Because if you do, then you don't meet the description. Now, look. Speaking to yourselves in psalms and hymns and spiritual songs, singing, there it is again, singing and making melody in your heart. And I've heard people go over here and say, well, it says here making melody, and to make a melody, you got to play an instrument. Well, folks, that's not true. That is not true. To make you make a melody when you put together any kind of orderly procession of music. It's called a melody. Okay? And so making melody where? In your heart to the Lord. It doesn't say making melody on a piano, making melody on the drums, making melody on a guitar, making melody on, you name it. It doesn't say making melody on a mechanical instrument. It says making melody in your heart to the Lord. And there's another important point here, folks, when we're looking at the description of the music in the New Testament, because people will come up and they'll say, oh, you're in the Church of Christ. That's that group that doesn't believe in instruments in worship. And I'll tell them that's not true. Because here is the instrument right here. Here's the instrument that God wants used in praising Him. It's the heart. It's interesting here that men want to play on the instruments that they make. But when it comes to praising God, He wants us to offer up that praise with the instrument that He made. If you make an instrument, don't you want to hear it? Well, God made the heart, our mind, and that's what He wants to hear in worship. Not people banging on man-made instruments. He wants people offering up the melody that they make in their heart to to the Lord. Again, there's no mention of playing there. There's no mention of playing there. All these verses, sing, 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 sing. No mention of playing. Well, let's go on and look at another one.